hello and good evening. Just wait for people to come on, so we'll just talk rubbish for a little while. Well, maybe the whole thing, you never know. So yeah, we'll just let people come on and just see what happens from there. We'll tell you what the subject's going to be in a minute, shall we? Or should we say now?
We can say no, and we can repeat it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we thought tonight would probably be quite a short one, but we'll see how it goes. We say that and it doesn't end up to be that, but let's cover what we're going to cover. So tonight we thought we'd talk about getting pupils to identify subjects on the move mainly, and why that's important and how we found it worked. The reason we thought we'd do one of this, Lou does her workshops around the country, and this is always something people pick up on, isn't it? To me, this is a good takeaway. People take it away, and sort of 2 hours later you're getting texts, aren't you, saying, "Oh, I tried that and it worked and it proved certain things," and things like that. So it may not seem too important, but we find that people find it very useful, so we thought we'd cover it really, didn't we?
Shall we give the basis of what we are talking about, what we're really meaning when we say identifying subjects? Now, as driving instructors, we are brilliant at identifying subjects for pupils. So, at the end of the road, turn left. Who identified the end of the road? Us. At the roundabout ahead, take the third exit right. Who identified the roundabout? Us. So you can see we are pretty good at giving those verbal commands that involve the pupil doing nothing other than having to react to us telling them they're coming to something.
Yeah, even Q&A, what you can do at the pedestrian crossing ahead. You've told them there's a pedestrian crossing ahead.
What are you going to do if the lights turn green? That type of thing. Okay, so we're very good at doing that. Now, the problem with that is it takes away responsibility. So it takes away responsibility from the pupil to be able to identify a subject for themselves. And the times that we then see them struggle to identify a subject for themselves is post-test. So there is this train of thought that perhaps the accidents that are happening at junctions, for example, are pupils who are not necessarily recognising when they're coming to a junction in the first place, because you can see there's a skill that they haven't actually had to do for themselves. The independent drive is a classic, when the examiner has said take the third road on the right, and not only are they having to remember that, and they get a little bit worked up and paranoid, don't they, about actually remembering the third one, but they're counting them off, and you can see them looking for it because they're not actually necessarily looking for their, used to looking for their own junctions, for example.
I think it can, certainly I found it can get rid of some little sort of unusual things that happen on tests. So people say, well, they don't normally do that. So, for example, pedestrian crossings is a good example, I think. You get instructors that say, well, they failed on pedestrian crossings because they weren't checking the mirrors, or they didn't slow down, or they speeded up, or something like that. And normally when they see a crossing, they check the mirrors and they go through the nice routine that we've done. But the thing is, you can give them a brilliant routine, but if you're not prompting them, and you're not therefore getting them to prompt themselves, that routine doesn't happen. So we're very good at prompting, as Lou said. We're basically an auto response. So as soon as you say, at the end of the road, turn right, they start their auto response, which is MSPSL. If you're not saying that, then the auto response doesn't happen, and therefore it definitely won't happen when you're not there.
So we are quite passionate about encouraging our pupils right from early stages of identifying subjects for themselves. So one of the things that I do fairly early on, but I do it throughout the whole of my lessons, is identifying junctions. I think that's really important and obviously fairly easy, and it can happen all the time. But just go and try this. If you guys haven't done it before, go and try it with a pupil that you've got tomorrow, perhaps a pupil who's fairly confident and competent, and has got the basic skills there already, and just see what you find. See what you find from this experiment. Go and tell them that every time they see a junction, whether it's on the left, whether it's on the right, or whether it's in front of them at the end of a road, that they need to say junction. So they're going to say the word junction to you. So they're going to identify the junction and say junction. The point where they say junction, you're going to say ignore it or turn left or right. Okay, so you're going down a road and you want to take the third road on the right. So they see a junction and you say ignore it, junction, ignore it, junction, turn right. So the earlier they identify the junction, the earlier you are going to be able to give them the direction. So the earlier they're going to have to prepare for that junction, and just see the reactions you have, because without doubt, it never fails to surprise me how late they are seeing junctions. So you're driving down the road and you're thinking there's a junction, there's a junction, there's a junction. Oh, junction! And they don't see it. So
particularly early stages, because there's so much going through the head. Junctions, we feel, are pretty complicated. There's a lot going on there, and then we tend to do them on the first lesson, second lesson. There's an awful lot going on.
Yeah, it's a really simple idea, Lorna, and yet it's grounded in such importance. You know, the reasons for all these reasons why they should be doing it, not just for tests, not just being able to identify their injunctions, but of course post-test stuff. Because I said at the beginning, for those of you that have just come on and haven't perhaps heard this, is that we are really good as instructors at identifying subjects for our pupils. So at the end of the road, turn left. That's us identifying the end of the road for them. Even as Blaine said with a question, so what are you going to do if the lights turn red? You've identified there are lights. So encouraging the pupils to work on the skills of identifying is crucial, and the simple one of just saying, you tell me when you see a junction, and the earlier you see it, the earlier you're going to be told where you're going to go. And it's a bit of a laugh and a bit of a joke, and it works like that. So give that a go. I certainly roll that out throughout any kind of identification of anything. So roundabouts, I might say, you tell me when you get a hint, a sniff, a feeling, a sign that we're coming up to a roundabout. Even if it's local knowledge, you tell me that you've got that local knowledge. So it can work for anything. You tell me when you next see a pedestrian crossing. And I've seen this, obviously I use this myself, but I've seen it work on a couple of standards checks. Driving instructors have used it on standards checks, and it's gone down well, and it's really made a point, and it's taken the pupil to the next stage of learning. So the kind of times that I would use it, very early on I would use it, when I'm still able to perhaps take a little bit of control, either physically or verbally if I need to, so it doesn't matter if they're saying things late. And really late on. So I'm just thinking at the moment that I've got a number of pupils at the moment who are booking tests or talking about booking tests. They're the classic guys who I'm now taking their basic skills to that next level, and that's certainly something that I will be, and I have been. In fact, today I've been doing it today. Yeah.
So you can do it on particular subjects like pedestrian crossings, roundabouts, traffic lights, whatever it happens to be. But you can also broaden it out and make it a little bit more broader, particularly with pupils that are a bit further down the learning process. So you could say something like, just tell me anything that may make you slow this vehicle down. And then that can be pedestrians on the side of the road. And that's really good because it allows you to really get inside the head of what they're prioritising. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And then you can see why they may be not just covering the brake for that child by the side of the road or whatever it happens to be. Because they're not prioritising that. So you can then prioritise, because there's a million things on any road that you could be slowing down for, but we're looking to see what they're taking in and what they're prioritising.
Yeah.
And it really gets you inside the head. I call it getting inside the head, and you get inside what their thing is. It becomes a bit like a commentary drive, and I think we've spoken about this before, and I certainly find that they just, after a while, and you do this from the very first, they just volunteer it, don't you? You don't,
yeah, totally.
And you then lead into commentary driving, which actually, if this is quite short, we could go into that, couldn't we? Because we're trying to think earlier, something we could add to it.
We'll add that commentary driving because that's quite useful. But yeah, tell me the next thing that might make you stop, slow down, or have to change your direction. And again, that gets, as you say, it gets into their head and actually tells you exactly what they're looking for. 9 times out of 10, it's not what you're looking at.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean that what they're looking at isn't wrong. But certainly the priorities might be a little bit different depending on the experience of the learner.
One I like that you, I was going to say, one that I like that you do, which I've never gone, is tell me anyone that might surprise you, anything that might surprise you. That works quite well. Yeah. And that can include people behind you then, or you might try, absolutely.
One that I have used quite recently, getting them to identify some positive things, because I think that's really, really important, that we're encouraging pupils to look not just at faults and negative kind of stuff, but positive things.
Well, people follow the pack, don't they? So people follow the pack. So if you make the pack positive, they're more likely to follow the positive pack than negative pack. You point out the negative because you don't want them to follow that pack, because their brain's not fully developed. Actually, what happens is they follow that pack. So if you had a child and you went on and on about smoking, for example, they end up smoking. You think, well, that's a bit bizarre. But that's the way sort of it works. It works in the opposite way to young brains, doesn't it, than you think it would work.
So I've got some great video footage this week of asking pupils to have a look around, glance around, and tell me who would win the prize for the best driver on the road at the moment. So excluding us, because of course we would hands down. But who is driving well? So who is the best driver on this road with you at the moment? And that's been really interesting. Is watching their reactions, because the first thing it does is make them look. So if you're looking for clever ways of stopping, saying which mirrors you're going to check, you know, what's danger coming up from behind you, you know, all that kind of stuff, is to do it in that kind of subliminal, subtle way of who would win the prize for the best driver on the road today, and that's a really good one. And I had a classic a couple of days ago. I've got it on film actually, so it will be out there, where my learner did that really lovely reaction of, and we were going along a 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway where he moved his eyes. So all of a sudden that kind of scanning happened. So it made that happen. And we know, don't we, that particularly our slightly younger, more experienced guys are a little bit kind of blinkered. So the first thing he did was actually moved his eyes around and was sussing everybody out, was actually kind of comparing everyone to everyone else. And there was certainly a number of seconds of silence where he was honestly, truly analysing everybody else's driving. And he came to the conclusion it was in fact the car in front of us, and the whole dual carriageway, and we could see obviously the guys on the other side as well. He came to the conclusion it was the car in front. And of course then the questions are, you know, what would make you give him the prize then? Give me the reasons why he's driving better than other people. And just at that point where we had said the guy in front on a 70-mile dual carriageway hit the curb. It's like, oh, now I've changed my mind. So we kind of cursed the guys in front.
I'm just going to go and see what the 16-year-old is.
We have a... Blaine's opting out just for a second. We have a 16-year-old, and those of you guys who have 16-year-olds, my God, if you're in the middle of GCSEs at the moment, you'll know he's possibly having a trauma to do with Romeo and Juliet, so quite possibly, not that Blaine would probably be able to answer that.
That's why he told me to go away.
Oh, he told you to go. So there we go. So yes, it kind of using little subtle games. I don't like the word games, but little tools and techniques, exercises. I don't know. I'm not very fond of exercise myself personally, but you know what I mean. So something like that. So who would win the prize for the best driver on the road at the moment? That kind of stuff. So identifying things. So just to kind of recap, because there's a few more of you on here than there were at the beginning. We've just had a little chat about identifying subjects and how important it is that this is a skill that we're encouraging in our learners, because we're very good as driving instructors at doing that for them. So as I've said before, at the end of the road, turn left. It's us that identifying the end of the road. At the roundabout ahead, take the first exit left. It's us that's identified the roundabout, meaning that the skill that they desperately need of being able to identify things coming up for themselves, we're taking away from them. We've taken responsibility for them. Classic, actually, this has reminded me that I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and I heard some drive instructors talking at lunchtime about an examiner who had said to one of the drive instructors, at the point where this pupil had gone over speed humps, a long road, gone over speed humps a little bit fast, and it was not overly comfortable. And the examiner, in a little bit of a joke and a kind of a jest with the ADI at the end, said, don't you teach your pupils speed humps, Jeff? And of course the ADI said, yes, of course I do, yeah, of course I do. So absolutely, of course you do. You're teaching what they are, where they are, how you're going to drive over them. You're not teaching identification. So that's the classic. What's happened there is the pupil knows exactly what they should do when they get to a speed hump, but do they know how to actually recognise one for themselves? Because I'm pretty certain that what's happened there is that, in fact, the instructor did confirm that this is what had happened, is absolutely, he had a real think about it. He said, absolutely, I'm the one identifying speed humps.
Yeah. Well, this road's got speed humps, just keep it low, my suspension. It kicks the camera. And I think that sort of leads on to something I've forgotten. Brain's gone.
You're on Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Looking around to see what they're pacing up and down.
So yeah, start thinking about that. And in your lessons tomorrow, if you have an opportunity to record yourself, do it. It's a really great self-reflective tool, is actually listening or watching yourself teach, even if it's just 10 minutes, even if you're just recording yourself for 10 minutes, and listen to yourself and listen to how often you identify things, either be it with a direct instruction, like the examples I've just given you, or in your Q&A. So what are you going to do if the lady walks out in front of you? Who identified the lady?
I would say you don't need to do this for the whole lesson. I think do it in little bite-sized chunks. Of next 3 or 4 minutes, just tell me anyone that might make you slow down or speed up. Next 3 or 4 minutes, just tell me all the pedestrian crossings you see, official, unofficial. Next 3 or 4 minutes, just tell me all the roundabouts that you see coming up. That's what I was going to add to that. You can then take that to a bit of Q&A, and instead of saying at the roundabout, take the third exit, right, whatever, I tend to try and get them to see the sign and read the sign, because obviously that's a skill they need when they're going to pass. So get them to identify the roundabout, hopefully do it early enough, and then I would say something like, well, you know, which way is it off towards Lyndhurst? We're going to go to Lyndhurst, so what exit is that? And get them to actually look at it. It's really interesting, because when they do that, you need to be ready, because things go wrong at this point, don't they? This is where they start to drift around. Yeah, that's cool.
Whether you use it or not.
Yeah.
Personally, don't necessarily use MSPSL, but
Well, don't start that,
but the routine, whatever routine
Yeah.
it is that's going on in their head, that's the thing that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you get them to identify to begin with. But if you don't get them to identify when they go on their own, that routine definitely won't happen, because it's a psychological thing. It's a thing that you can Google. It's a prompt, and it prompts. It gives them a little spurt to go and do their own MSPSL. When that's not there anymore, because they're not being prompted, then it goes. So we've talked about this before, but I think this is relevant as well to seeing it work and not necessarily believing us. If you get the pupils to drive home, you say, oh, you know we live from here, don't you? 2 minutes towards the end. Of course I do. Drive yourself home then. MSPSL just falls out the window, doesn't it? Because you're not doing that prompt anymore. And that's a good little experiment to try, isn't it? Just to see what happens when you're not giving them directions.
Yeah. Isn't this going to be needed in the new test? Well, to a certain extent it's needed in the original test, because from an independent drive point of view, to a certain extent they're having to recognise those type of things. So yeah, absolutely. The MSPSL argument again, we're not going to go there, Glenn. But so just a couple of things to leave you with, some tools to go off and try tomorrow in your lessons now. Lorna, you said you love this idea, come back and report back. That is the identifying the junctions. So saying to them, every time you see a junction, be it on the left, be it on the right, or be it at the end of the road, I want you just to say junction. The earlier you see the junction, the earlier I'm going to tell you whether we're going to ignore it, turn left or right. And just see how late they are observing junctions. And of course at some point it's really important that once the point has been proved that junctions are being seen a little bit late, or lo and behold they're actually seeing junctions really early, and that's great, that's proved a point as well, that actually there has to be some learning opportunities from that. So actually, how are you going to identify junctions? Because if all of a sudden they have shown you that they don't actually have any means or ways of identifying junctions, now is the opportunity to be filling in that gap and actually be exploring how do we identify junctions and things like that.
It could just be they're not looking far enough ahead. Yeah, it could be they know the lamppost opposite and the giveaway lines and all that sort of stuff, but they may not be aware, may just not be looking that 100 metres up the road rather than 50 metres up the road.
Great, Lorna, go give it a go. I'd be interested to know what you think. And certainly I'm doing some filming at the moment of most of my lessons. I've got a couple of guys tomorrow who will be brilliant at that, and I fully intend to be to do that with them, and so it's there for you guys to see the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want a quick talk about commentary driving?
I think that we can make that a
separate thing, because it can be quite in depth, can't it?
Yeah.
And some other subjects we've been asked for is overtaking, Q&A. Some others I can't remember which we've got add to the list.
My maps, because we had a bit of an internet issue with my maps.
Yeah.
But we have another live chat next week, and again courtesy of Marmalade Network. So a big heads up to those guys. They support us and sponsor us, and we vice versa support them too. So we're the driving instructors for support for ADI Network. If you've not heard from them, go and look them up. Blaine will put a link to Marmalade Network. And go and find them on their Facebook page as well. So that's Marmalade Network, and basically they're pretty good guys, and they're there to support you guys. They have a lot of things that a lot of associations are also offering, but there's no joining fee. It is based on the fact that you can sign up your pupils for Marmalade Insurance, and for that you will get commissions, so you'll be paid for the pupils that sign up with them. There are various competitions that you and your pupils will be entered into. There's also various packages that you get with them, like fuel cards and memberships to certain other products. Certainly our services are there. So loads of stuff for you guys. It's really worth going investigating, so suss them out. So we will be back next Friday, I believe, talking about the question of the week. Now, some of you may well be aware of my question of the week, but if not, we will do that next week and
ponder that for the next week and
ponder what the question of the week is, and how I use the question of the week, and I'll give you some examples of what I do and what that means.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. We're going to go back and do some more homework.
Yes, I think it's now the Christmas Carol. Although we haven't finished the physics, so I'm not sure what I'm ready for. So here we go.
Okie dokie. And thank you for listening. Bye bye.